Hey everyone, this is Matt Perez, and welcome back to the third episode of Creating Our Dice. So hopefully this episode we're going to take care of some fillets and we're going to bring everything into an assembly and set everything up for motion simulation. So I want to go ahead and hop into using Fillet, and I want to make sure that we select the tab that is FilletXpert. So if you remember, our pips were 0.06 deep. So I'm going to make my fillet radius 0.12 and start selecting. So we don't want to grab every single edge, but you can see here that there are several options. So the first one is grabbing all the internal features on one face. The second one is grabbing right features. So that's grabbing the internal and external edges on that face for the extrude cut. The next one is grabbing all the edges in the model, and this is obviously not what we want to do because we don't want to round the external edges for the pips. And then the last one here is grabbing all concave edges. Now this is really nice. This is something that didn't happen to me before in 2011 or 2012 as far as I can remember. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and it's going to apply a fillet to all those internal edges. So that is absolutely perfect for me. So I go ahead and hit apply, and that took very little time. Now I want to go ahead and grab this edge, and I'm going to grab all the external edges. So it says internal to feature 11 edges. And the feature in this case is that original boss extrude. I'm going to grab all those guys, but I don't want this to be the same 0.12. I'm going to make that 0.05 and hit apply. Alright, so I think at this point that gives us everything we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, save this guy, and before we get into the assembly and the motion, let's go ahead and apply some materials to this and do a quick render. So 2013 has seen some updates for photo view, and it's also seen some nice updates in the fact that you can use some luxology materials, and that's really great. So I'm going to go ahead, just left click on one of these faces, use the drop down, and I'm going to apply an appearance to the entire part. So in my appearances, I've downloaded some luxology materials. I'm going to go ahead and use the drop down box, wait for them to load, and I think I've got some furry materials in here. So let's take a look at what I've downloaded here. See, we've got windy grass, we've got meadow, we've got green metallic paint. So it looks like we've got a lot of grass materials. We don't have any furry materials, but that's okay. We can take a look at some of the plastic materials. We're going to go into clear plastic, and SOLIDWORKS has also updated a lot of these for 2013. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab an acrylic, and I'm going to go to my advanced tab and take a look at the transparency amount that's listed under illumination. So if we come down here, let's look at transparency amount is 100%. If I go back to color, I'm going to make this guy a dark red, back to illumination, and I'm going to give this guy some transparency. Now we don't want to do 100% again, but let's do somewhere around 50%. So I'm going to do 0.5. Go ahead and hit OK. Now for the pips, we want to go ahead and we want to make them white. So I'm going to grab the inside of that, and I'm going to apply material to that face. Now under plastic, I'm going to go to a satin finish white plastic and hit OK. Now here's where part of the great updates in SOLIDWORKS 2013 come from. We can right click on that white satin finish and say copy appearance. So now I'm going to come into the center of this pip, and we've got some more options here. We've got copy appearance and paste appearance. So I'm going to paste that guy, but before I do that, I'm going to pin this guy open and make sure that we're pasting it to the face. So our appearance target stays pinned open, and that's another great feature here. So we can simply click on this face and say paste appearance, and it happens relatively quickly. We can also do this based on the feature. So in our case, the feature is going to be a fillet. So let's go to the 5 side and copy the appearance. So you can see that fillet was our FilletXpert, and it applied it to all of those faces. So here if we do this feature, that feature was only the extrude cut on this face. So we need to go back and we need to do it to all the faces. Of course, it'll approach the faces on a single side as a single feature. But you can see that this really speeds up applying materials to models like this, where you have tons of different faces, tons of different features that you don't necessarily want the same material on. So now we can close out that appearance target and take a look at this thing in an environment. So I'm going to turn perspective on, and I'm going to go ahead and grab one of the rooms. Let's do gray with overhead fill light, and I'm going to turn on my preview window. So one of the great things about SOLIDWORKS scenes and SOLIDWORKS materials is they're pretty realistic. You obviously have to change some of the settings, but everything ends up being pretty realistic. So I'm going to look at this thing from the front and make sure that I'm actually looking at it on the flooring. Turn my preview window back on. Closing the preview window, using an integrated preview on a single pane or something like that, these will speed or slow down your system considerably depending on what system you have. You can see that every time I try to use the 3D mouse and rotate this thing around, that SOLIDWORKS does not like the preview window to update, especially with these materials. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into options, and I'm going to turn my render quality down to better, turn my bloom on, turn my direct caustics on, and one thing you notice at the bottom of this is now we have a network rendering option. I'm only working on a single computer, so obviously I don't have a network rendering setup that I can use. But if you guys are working on a big network of computers and you're rendering at night, you can pull some resources from other areas and actually have very quick renders complete for you guys overnight. So let's take a look at this render real quick. Alright guys, so there is a quick render. You can see that we've got the satin material for each of the pips, and we can see through, it's got the transparency, and the detail's pretty good, and we really didn't do any setup work, but that's not the main purpose of this. So I just want to show you how quick you could set up the materials, set up the render, and now we can go ahead and move on to doing some motion simulation. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is save this guy, and now we want to do a new assembly. And you can see from the drop down window we've got make assembly from part. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and make an assembly in inch, and I'm simply going to bring that die in. Alright, so this guy gets centered automatically on our top plane where I clicked, but you can see that it's got the little lowercase f next to it. That means it's fixed in place. We don't want this guy fixed in place, so I'm going to right click on it and say float. I'm also going to left click on this guy, do Control C to copy, just click in my window and Control V and paste that guy. You can see it pasted it wherever my mouse cursor was. And the last thing we need to do is draw a floor or a table or something to drop these onto. So I'm going to go up to Insert Component, I'm going to create a new part, and I'm simply going to hit Escape. So this will put my new part at the standard origin for the assembly. So now I can edit this guy, which is fixed, and that's fine, but I want to edit that part. And on my top plane, I'm simply going to just draw a table surface. I'm going to turn. So we're going to center that guy at the origin and just draw a table. It's, roughly 20 by 20 will be fine. So we'll make this guy, let's say 12 by 20, and we're going to extrude it. For right now, I'm going to make this thing a fairly thin extrusion. I'm going to show you later why you probably don't want to do that. Hopefully. We'll see how everything works out. But I'm just going to make it 0.1 thick. That's the standard number that comes in right now. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to exit that. So right now, let's go ahead and save the model, save everything, and I'm going to name it as Roll of the Dice. So it's asking me now, do I want to save my virtual components internally or externally? So this table, this part 3 at assembly 1 that we created, it is internal to the assembly. So I'm just going to save that internally. I don't have any real need to save that part externally. I don't need to use it anywhere else. But let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. Let's move these guys around. I kind of want to get them up in another position. Alright, and I want to rotate these guys around. Because we have these extrudes, these pips that we created, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my temporary axis and take a look at everything here. Now it's not actually bringing up my temporary axis, so we're just going to have to go into the Move Component, Rotate Component option. and we'll rotate this guy around, and then we'll rotate this guy around a little bit. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that these guys don't drop and land on their flat face. I want them to hit a point, I want them to hit a corner so they bounce kind of erratically. So we're going to go ahead and do OK. Alright, so now we're going to save this guy, rebuild the document, and we can go into do a motion study, but I want to go ahead, apply some materials, and then we'll pick up the motion study in the next video. So my table material, I'm just going to right click on that guy, I'm just going to make it plain carbon steel. The dice, I'm going to right click on, and I'm just going to make them ABS PC, some sort of plastic material. And you can see that overrode the acrylic material that we applied to it. Now the one that we applied to it was not actually a material, more as an appearance. So right now they're all clear except for the pips are white because that was applied to a face, which if you look in the hierarchy of things, you can see the actual dice is the polycarb plastic, and the face is what's going to be applied, that satin white. If we wanted to change the color back, we can go back in here and apply it to something farther down the line. We can apply it to the body. So we'll go ahead and again we'll make this guy transparent. Hit OK. So now if we look at the hierarchy of things, we've got red applied to the body, which is above that polycarb plastic, which is applied to the part itself. Alright, so let's save this thing and we'll pick up the motion study in the next video.